Thank you for watching our Vows by Mojica. These episodes offer realistic tips and stories that will help keep our marriages strong. Here, we interview couples who have been married for 20 plus years, who show us what it means to them to keep their marital vows. This season, we interviewed couples who, during moments of trials, differences, and tragedies, learned that it was by stepping back and refocusing their energy and commitment in each other that they were enabled to find strength in their marriage.
Hello. I was born in Escondido, California, and raised there on an avocado ranch for a while, and then we moved over to Fallbrook, and that's kind of where I spent the rest of my life until I met Hank. And it was kind of fun. You know, I worked for my dad, who had a plumbing shop, along with my mom, who was his secretary during the week. I got the weekends. So that's it. Graduated from a little high school called Fallbrook Union High School, and had a lot of fun.
I grew up in Wisconsin, a little town called Verona, outside of Madison, about 10 miles outside of Madison. Farm was a 40-acre farm, and I went to a rural school, a one-room schoolhouse right outside the village of Verona. We had just a few cows, a few pigs, and a few chickens on the farm. It wasn't making any money because we didn't, so we were successful in doing that. But my dad had a job at a local county farm, and that's where I made the money to support the family. The day after I graduated from high school, we moved to Southern California. Of the 5 siblings, the 2 oldest, my brother and my oldest sister, they stayed back in Wisconsin to go to college, and the 3 youngest of us went with my parents to Southern California. It was Escondido is where we stopped and bought a home there, and I went to Palomar Junior College, and that's where I met Shirley at a dance at the college.
Well, we will have been married 47 years this July, and when I think back, it just doesn't seem that long. It just seems like yesterday. And you know, we've had a lot of fun, and we've done a lot of things. We've traveled the world over, and our kids traveled with us, and we've lived in Europe, and we've lived in Asia. So our kids have a broad education from moving like we did, and it was fun.
Now, looking back, it seems like it was just yesterday. Looking forward, I remember when we were married, I thought, wow, people who were married for 10 years, that's a long time, you know, and 10 years from now, there'll be a whole bunch of stuff that I won't even think about doing, I'll have done. And so it's all perspective. 47 years right now, looking back, seemed like a very short time. Now looking ahead into eternity, that seemed like a long time.
Oh, that was really interesting. I was a junior in high school, actually, and the boy that I wanted to ask me to the junior-senior prom didn't ask me, and so I didn't go. And my girlfriend, she didn't go either. The guy she wanted to ask her didn't ask her, so she wanted to go to Palomar Junior College dance. They were having a dance that evening, and I told her, no, I don't want to go. Marlon Brando in the Appaloosa was on TV. It only came on twice a year. You know, they played it in the fall and then again in the spring, and then it went into some hole that they never came out again. And so I said, no, I've got to watch this movie. And she says, well, I can't go if you don't go. So I went, and we got to Palomar Junior College, and that's where I met Hank.
Well, at the dance, I was going to college, so it's my dance, or but anyway, I was dancing, and I just kind of saw out of my peripheral vision there was this girl, and she was kind of spotlighted because of the exit sign or something, but there was just a light just coming right at her, and I just said, I got to ask her. And then I saw somebody going towards her, another guy going towards her, so I kind of picked up my step and got there first, and danced, and we just talked, and just didn't seem like I wanted to break it off. It just after every dance you say thanks a lot, and you go and find somebody else. But so that night I just kept going back, and finally I said, well, where do you live? And she said, Fallbrook. Of course, I didn't know where Fallbrook was, but I said, oh, that's great, and I'm not sure whether I asked you out or not at that time, or a phone number or whatever I asked. I know I said, you want to have a drink?
Yes, and I said no.
And I thought, wow, I'm thirsty, but she thought, maybe alcoholic drink, and I was wanting to go get a drink of water, but I didn't want to, leave her because then somebody else would dance with her. So those were the complications of life that we had to live through. But somehow I went up, I looked through the map, and I found Fallbrook. And so I drove up there. It's about, 40 miles, and side roads and everything. It's not a short distance. And went up there, and of course I didn't know where she lived. I looked you up in the telephone book. That's when they have telephone booths, but the phone book's still there. And I looked up the name, because that's all I think I knew about you. And I asked, well, where do you live in? And she said, oh, I live here on the road. And of course, I didn't know what road that was. I said, well, I'm here close to the high school. Well, she was just right down the road. So I went down there where she lived, and went in there and met her parents, and that's always fun thing to do. As a parent, I didn't see too much problem with that, but as a young man, that was kind of scary. But anyway, that's kind of how the first time went, and then from then on, but it was a long drive. After working some nights and getting off at about 9, then driving up to 40 miles, and then spending quite a bit of time up there, and then about 11 o'clock driving home, I tend to fall asleep. And I'm not sure how I got home a lot of the times on those windy roads, but obviously did. Yeah. That's how we met.
Yep. I remember he asked me at the dance, can I drive you home? And I said, well, no. I didn't know who he was. My goodness, he is so positive. He is your greatest, my greatest supporter. If I want to do something, he stands behind me and tells me that I can accomplish whatever it is that I'm after. And so that's wonderful. Plus, he has a really dry sense of humor. Sometimes I don't catch it, and so he'll say it again, and I'll look at him, and I know he's got a joke in there, and I have to figure it out. So he's funny too, and I've always felt safe with him. So he's just my best friend.
I think that's really the key, and it sums it all up, is that we're the best friends. She's my best friend, I'm hers, and it's always been that way, and it's helped us through any rocky times or whatever, because this is the person that we not only love the most, but love being with the most. There isn't any guys' night out that I would rather go to, or there isn't any place I'd rather be other than home with Shirley and then with the kids as they came. But So I think that's really it. There's so many characteristics and traits that Shirley has that has helped me personally in my life. I was a total introvert, and she's helped me out of that. Sometimes I pop back in whenever I'm uncomfortable, but that's really the key, is that she's my best friend.
Yeah. I remember a time after we had our kids, 5 of them, and they were close, about 18 months apart. And he comes home and he goes, I think you need some time alone. And so he says, go. And so I went out and I sat in the car. I didn't know where to go. So I sat in the car a half an hour and then went back in. And he said, well, what did you do? And I said, I sat in the car. And he says, we're going to have to plan this better. So those are the kind of things that he would do. When he started doing that, I was finally able to start genealogy. I would go to the local library and work on genealogy. So that's kind of how we got started on that.
The crafts in Dugway.
Yeah.
It's a big out for you.
It was. We went to other side. We went to where you could do ceramics, and we created a bunch when we lived in Dugway. However, only one set of doves has survived. They're
47 years old.
And they sit in our entranceway in our house.
Yeah.
And our kids keep asking us, why do you keep those ugly things? And if you flip them over, it has Hank's initials on it, and he's the one that made them, and it has the year. And so once the kids realize that, they realize that's quite a keepsake. I had just graduated from high school, and Hank had asked me to marry him, and my parents said, are you sure you don't want to go to college first? And I was never really a bookish person, and so I said no. I just really felt like my life laid with Hank. I felt comfortable, and I still had that thing from the Holy Ghost that said he will never lie to you. And so I felt like he was the best person that I would ever find. And after we were married, he was sent to Vietnam. And so had I not married him when I did, the chances of us getting married were next to nothing. But I think my parents were a little less staunch against it than my grandparents were. They just thought that was the craziest thing ever.
Well, I had some of my siblings thought that I was way too young, and Shirley was definitely too young, and this isn't going to last. This marriage thing isn't going to last but about 6 months, and it's going to be over. And because he's going in the military, because I was drafted by that time, and I knew I was going in the military, and I knew at that time I was going to go to Vietnam. It just kind of 1, 2, 3, and so everything was kind of stacked against us for staying together. And so they kind of made it known through little slide comments at that time that they didn't think they was going to last. But interesting enough, it seemed like the comments just kind of bounced off. I was probably too Twitter-pated, you might say, to really pay attention to what was being said. It was just, I was kind of in the sky or whatever I was. Probably in love, that's probably what it was. But just didn't pay attention, and off we went from Southern California to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, right after we were married. That's where it started, Missouri.
Yep. So we're back where we started.
Pretty close.
That was really hard. I had our first child when he was away. And that was hard because when he was leaving, I was ill. And we had a pregnancy test and it said, no, you're not pregnant. And then you think, well, what in the heck is wrong with me? And so I kept being ill. Finally went back to my family doctor that I had when I was a child. And he said, well, you're pregnant. And so that was scary to have the first child without him there. My mom was there for a support when I was having my first child, and you have to love her. She's just a real interesting lady, and she says to me, well, it's going to be a while, you're going to hurt, I'm going to go on to work. And so I did it all on my own, and she came back when it was all over. The reason for that was that she couldn't stand to see her child in pain. So that was interesting. Oh, I was saying, if you and your spouse are in a disagreement and you're thinking that maybe your point is more valid than their point, we always had this saying, is it worth dying on your sword for? Is whatever the argument about worth so much that you would be willing to die to win that argument? And for us, nothing's ever that important. Is it?
No.
No.
That's a military. You're going to die on your sword for that? Well, no, okay. This is the question. I'm just got off on the track right now, but this is the question I always, from the get-go, I'd wake up and just out of the blue ask Shirley, are we doing the right things? And forever, I'll still do that. I'd be pondering and I'd just say, are we doing the right things? And that's what we would do, is we'd ask ourselves, what are the right things that we should be doing? And that's such a broad question, obviously, but it helps us get out of this contentious arena into something else where we can then kind of mull it over and work our way back. Like when you hit the deer on the car, the main concern was everybody all right, yeah, we had to pay the deductible, and that was inconvenient to get it fixed. But things broken, wow, so many things get broken, and the loss, such as this move that we're facing right now. Some of the pictures and photos of our family from past times, our family photos, were all full of mold. They were destroyed. And we looked at that and, oh boy, that's too bad. Yeah, but what can you do? So we lost that. But it's always keeping a perspective of things that helps us through it, I think. And I'm not sure how I don't know how we remind ourselves about it, but we just say maybe it's not as important as other things.
Yeah, for me is, well, how does this affect my eternal progress? And it's just things. It's just a thing. And so I can let it go really easy. Except the one picture that we're driving all the way to Washington to pick up.
Yeah, that may or may not be okay.
My daughter swears it's okay. It's a picture of Christ. I bought it for Hank for Christmas. Golly, what, about 10 years ago? And it's a picture of Christ as he came down. And there's warriors from all the wars that have ever been on earth. And in the background, you see the destruction of the Twin Towers. And it's an awesome, awesome picture. And it's just that picture of Christ. There's something about it, something so peaceful with him coming down, and Hank goes, really, we could buy another one of those. No, we're going to drive up here and go pick it up. Because it's an awesome picture, we'll have to show it to you guys.
The thing is that, you know, we've lost a lot of things. We've lost a house. It wasn't convenient to move at that time, and it was upside down, and so, you know, the big investment of one's life went out the window. So did everything else that goes along with such a situation. And when you downsize, when you get older, well, we downsized, and we had basically all we owned, had with us was what we carried in 2 suitcases, and then now some of the stuff we're going to pick up. But all the rest of the stuff, it's just all stuff.
And that's all it is. Actually, when it's gone, it's like this big weight is off your shoulder.
A lot of it you never remember.
Yeah, you know, and then so, well, why did we have that stuffed in that closet anyway?
When we would move, and we couldn't take, because of the weight limit, especially overseas, we'd have to put stuff in storage. 4 years later, when we had it brought back, I said, what is all of this stuff that was in boxes? And 95% of it was then chucked, given to Goodwill or whatever, because we had purchased things to, you know, clothes and stuff to replace that, and it was no longer needed or wanted. Yeah. And it's interesting how that goes like that.
We come back to, is it worth dying on your sword for?
Yeah.
It's just with, is this situation so important to you that you're willing to risk your relationship with a person over it? And when you look at it that way, and then you look at your temple blessings, then really a lot of things just fall away. They're just no longer that important.
And you get tried with that. You know, if you take that route, which we have, it isn't a superficial thing that, oh yeah, it doesn't matter. You get tested. And you say, well, are you willing to really live by your code or your, and yeah, we are.
Well, first, Hank is my best friend, and so, and sometimes I tease him, I say, you're my only friend. But he always has my back, and I have his, and so just knowing that he's there, that if I'm having a bad day and I need a shoulder to cry on, or if I need to bounce ideas off of him, no matter how silly they sound, he'll listen to them, and he'll not make fun of them, and he is just awesome.
I think number one, when you get married, the whole idea is to stay married. And so if you never talk about divorce, if that doesn't even become an option on the table, and you keep it not only off the table, but not even close to the table, then the problems are worked out, because you're going to not keep your marriage, that's barely hanging in there, but that you're going to help your marriage through this, help each other through this, whatever this is, and there's a lot of this is to be helped through. But if you never even make divorce an option, then it becomes a little bit easier, I think. I go back to the 100-100 marriage. That philosophy helped me. Really, it just says, all right, I'm going to give. Because when Shirley was, when we were having the children and Shirley was down on her back, the 100% was there. I had to give. But that didn't mean that some other times, like when I was gone on field training exercises to reforge her, to in Korea for a whole year, and to my schooling for military for 12 months, to Vietnam, she had to give that 100% just to have 100% available for the family and at the critical point. And so there will be times that you feel like I'm the only one carrying the load, and that will be true. But through the whole, now you look back, I look back 47 years, it's about 50% of the time. You know, we shared it. But there were many times that I carried the load alone, or Shirley carried the load alone. With that in mind, and you know that when that, whatever that is, when I was gone, then I came back, things would change. In other words, this too will end. Philosophy, you're going to stay and you give 100% because you know that it'll end and you'll be back together, both giving 100%, and it'll be smoother. That helps you through those tough times. Other things, you don't allow other things to get to the table. You don't allow making friends of the opposite sex. You don't allow parties and nights off with your buddies, or to come to the table and become options. You give those things up and you say they're not there. So you regulate what comes to the table as options. And I think that's very, very critical, and to constantly review those things, and to make sure that good things and better things and the best things are put as options on the table, not other things that you would wreck the marriage. And that's how you do it.
Yep.
Shirley, any final thoughts?
Just going back to the die on your sword. Are you willing to wreck your marriage for whatever point that you're trying to make? Or, is going out with your girlfriends more important than being home with your husband? And do you talk bad about your husband when you're out with your friends? They may say something bad about their husband. Well, do you join in doing that, or do you try and avoid that kind of thing? And I always try to avoid that kind of thing because Hank is my best friend. I would never say anything awful about him.
Yeah, that spouse trashing is
Yeah.
a terrible thing to put on the table.
Yep.
Yeah.